welcome to Diplomatic Channel this week. I am Amarachi Ubani. Now, the biggest scare in the world, apart from the fight against insurgency in Nigeria's north and the battle against ISIS in the Middle East, is the Ebola virus. It's not so much that it is spreading, but that it is spreading faster than doctors can be sure what medication or vaccine can help contain the virus. In the latest news, another case has been spotted in the U.S. state of Texas. This time it's one of the health workers at the same hospital Thomas Duncan was being treated before he died. In fact, the health worker, a woman who has not been identified yet, was said to have treated Mr. Duncan while wearing full protective gear. So how did she get Ebola? An official at the U.S. federal agency said there was a clear breach of safety protocol and there could likely be other cases. Now, we've confirmed the woman presents the first known transmission of Ebola on U.S. soil. She is said to be in stable condition right now and is in an isolation ward at the hospital. Head of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Thomas Frieden, said 48 people who may have had contact with the late Duncan are being monitored also for symptoms. Let's not forget that Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone are still the hardest hit with the Ebola virus disease. The UN is estimating that more than 4,000 people have died due to the disease. However, there is a silver lining. A UN Special Envoy on Ebola, David Nabarro, has hopes the outbreak can be brought under control in about 3 months. One of the reasons these countries have such high figures is because many people did not understand then that Ebola is a highly infectious disease. The virus is spread by direct contact with the body fluids of an infected person or animal. So a high standard of hygiene is important. That means washing hands as often as possible, especially after visiting the restroom, before eating, and even before touching your face. And where it's impossible to use water, a hand sanitizer will do, as it kills about 99.9% of germs. In the meantime, those hoping to make it into the United States and the UK in the next few days from the 3 West African countries I mentioned will face intense screening at major airports. While the UK has not recorded a case yet, the government's top medical advisor says it does not expect a handful it does expect a handful of Ebola cases in the coming months. But here are other stories that we're keeping our eyes on for you here on Diplomatic Channel. The UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, was in the Libyan capital Tripoli over the weekend to try to convince groups battling over control of the country to come to peaceful agreement. Since dictator Muammar Gaddafi was killed in 2011, Libya has been struggling between 2 governments and 2 parliaments. An armed group has been in control of the country's capital since August, while another armed group from the western city of Misrata seized Tripoli, setting up its own cabinet and assembly, and has been trying to force the international community to recognize its government. Mr. Ban had a meeting with Libya's deputy speaker and other lawmakers from the elected parliament. He said he was there to support a UN-sponsored dialogue to try to end militia fighting. Still in Africa, there are reports that Algerian troops have killed 8 suspected militants suspected of killing a French tourist. The men were killed between Friday and Saturday in Bouara region. The Bouara region is home to Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, Akim, and a splinter group, Caliphate soldiers, which declared loyalty to ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. Finally, Russian media say President Vladimir Putin has ordered soldiers stationed near its border with Ukraine to return to their base. Russia had previously announced its troops were withdrawing, but NATO and the US found it not to be true. The latest order comes as President Putin prepares for his meeting with the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko on Friday. Welcome back. Last week, we introduced to you the Constituency for Africa that was founded in 1990. The group is so diverse that you find people from all walks of life, businessmen, college professors, former ambassadors, and government officials. I had a sit down with one of those special people. Sylvie Bello is the founder of the Cameroon-American Council. Sylvie is Cameroonian-American, living her passion of advocating the rights of African-immigrant Americans in the U.S. Having lived in the United States since she was 17, Sylvie shattered expectations of other ethnic Africans in high school and in college. That experience coming to the U.S. as a teenager from bilingual Cameroon is the foundation of her becoming an activist.
For the last 50 years, we've been coming here steadily as voluntary migrants. Of course, we have been coming to the U.S. for 500 years as involuntary migrants. So life in the U.S. for the involuntary migrants has prepared us for today. In this year, we're celebrating 50 years of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 because of the African-Americans who were here during the Civil Rights Movement. They fought for their rights in America, made sure that you can have equity and equality in education, in jobs, in housing, and many of the amenities that as African immigrants will enjoy today. Once they did that in 1964, in 1965, they passed the Immigration Act of 1965, which essentially opened the gates for many, many folks of today, including myself. So since 1965, African immigrants have enjoyed the many benefits that comes from being Black in America, which our African-American brothers and sisters worked hard for. Unfortunately, our parents and grandparents, such as the president's father, who was here before 1965, did not actively engage in the civil rights movement. Unbeknownst to them, because they were focused on building nations back home, they did not know that, many years later, they themselves or their kids will return. That notwithstanding, being newer Americans, there's always challenges. We have issues of paper. We have issues of documentation. We have language access. Even for a country like Nigeria, where you have a lot of diasporans who speak English. Speaking English is one thing, understanding the different slangs, the different nuances of the language. So a big part of it is language access. I'm from Cameroon. I'm with the Cameroon-American Council. And of course, we have not just French, but we have 500 languages in Cameroon and all across the continent.
You're an immigrant yourself, so tell us your story.
Well, I graduated high school. My parents thought I should come to the U.S. I wanted to follow my dad and go to and study hydrology in Holland. That's where he studied hydrology. And he said, come to the U.S. and from there you can go anywhere else in the world. From there you can touch anyone else in the world. So they made that decision for me. My mom came here the year before to check out places. She went to California. She said, it's too far. I'm like, Mom, I'm going to be far anyway. She's like, I don't want it to be that far, because she was a transportation manager. She was a country director for Benin and for Cameroon Airlines in Benin and Togo. And she said, I want some place on the East Coast where I can zoom in and zoom out. I don't want it too far out. And then on the East Coast, she came to Maryland and DC and said, no, too many Cameroonians. I need you focused. You're my first child. I don't want you smiling with the boys. I just want you focused in school. And so she picked New Jersey. She said it's close to New York, but it's not quite in New York. The school is affordable. And so that's how I came to the United States. And my dad brought me, it was just like going to boarding school, really. My parents came, they brought me to school, set me up, spent a week with me, and left. In college, I was fortunate that they paid for my tuition, which allowed me to immerse myself in the country. So I'm really honored that and just really privileged that my parents were able to do that.
And for many immigrants coming out of Africa into the U.S., one of the challenges they face is a culture shock. What was your challenge?
Mine was self-identity. Just who am I? I'm 17 years old. I'm walking around with this black skin, not fully understanding what Black in America means. Not fully understanding the challenges, the sweat, the blood that was laid down for me to get the scholarships I got in school. And on my college campus, I actually wrote a paper, and it was actually published in a school paper about being Black. It really tugged on me, am I African-American? Am I African in America? Am I just passing through. And I'm the kind of person I love to submerge myself where I just love information. So I started taking a lot of classes, attending every single Black event, knowing that I'm walking around with this Black skin I need to fully understand. And yeah, so in senior year of college, which is the fourth year, I decided to join a sorority. And much to the dismay of the Black sorority sisters, I did not join a Black sorority. And I figured, you know what, I'm always going to be a Black woman, but I don't know when in my life I'm going to meet and have this strong bond with non-Black women. That was one. Then the second thing, I saw that my immigrant, the fact that a lot of the women in my predominantly Latino sorority called Omega Phi Chi Multicultural Sorority had similar lives like me. They live like a double life. They have like the American side and they have the other side. You know, when I'll go to their homes, their mom all spoke Spanish, but when they come to school, they all speak English. In school, they will eat, I don't know, they will eat American food, burgers and mashed potatoes, but at home, they will eat, fried beans or, and fajitas and tacos, So I saw my sorority, so I was like, wow, this sounds like me. Because when I would go back to my aunt and uncle in West Orange, it's totally different. And then when I come to school, I'm totally different. So I met, that group of women and I said yes. And when I finally came out that I pledged Omega Phi Chi, another Black sorority, it was not fun because there were not that many Black student leaders. I was an RA, which is like a dump captain, where you